Welcome to the demonstration of Agile Data 0.4. In this video, I'll look into some of the really basic features of Agile Data, and I'll explain why this framework exists and how you can use it inside your application, and then we'll create a very small application together using a very early alpha version of Agile Data. We don't have a page yet for Agile Data, but you can head towards a GitHub page and you get a lot of information over here. Most of the examples are still won't be working, and you'll need to look at the roadmap on the bottom. So we're 0.4 release, and we're planning a couple of features soon. As you see, we have been shipping some releases now. Okay, so what is it about? Agile Data is a simple way to abstract your data. It is a library which is really easy to understand for beginners, but it has a couple of important features for sophisticated developers. And one of the key features is ability to be database agnostic. So I will demonstrate how you can use certain features across SQL and some non-SQL database. In our case, it will be just arrays, as we're still adding supports for more databases. So I have an empty folder over here. I don't have anything else, and I'll need to load up data as dependency. So I'm heading off to the packagist over here, copying this acquired thing and installing Agile Data. Okay, so we have 0.41 version of Agile Data. Looking at the folder structure now, I have vendor and a couple of composer files. And I will be building a very basic command line application which will connect to my database and fetch some of the data. Okay, that's the database I will be using. I want to use the table called person, and that's the contents of the database. And particularly, I would like to load record 1. But I want to do it properly by defining the model and loading it correctly. So I have to start with defining a class. I'll use a method print greeting, which will do echo. My name is will do like this. Okay, now this code, what you see over here, it's not it's database agnostic, and will be coming to this theme over and over again. So it doesn't depend on any specific database implementation. And to show you that, I'll create a database connection. Okay, I'm just gonna use a copy. So that's the database, localhost, username and password. That's it. I'm gonna call it db1. And that's our database, which resides in MySQL. And even though I'm not specifying in here MySQL, this factory method looks inside a connection string MySQL, and it will actually use the class of persistence MySQL. So if I do a dump db1 and look inside console, I'll see that that's actually a persistence SQL class, and it has a connection which is implemented through DSQL. It uses MySQL query classes and so on and so on. So it all works pretty nicely. I'm going to define another database, which will be ATK4 data array. And in order to initialize this one, I'll need to pass my static data parameter, and static data will, that's it. Okay, so inside it could be session, it could be some other source which transforms into data, but the important point about this one is that the data is available in memory of the PHP, and I have this, let's say John with some data, okay, and comma. When I'm initializing that, I'm setting db2. If I var dump the db2 now, I need to use new. Okay, if I'm dumping that out now, you'll see that it uses a different class, persistence array, instead, and the data is stored differently. Okay, so that's it. Now to the fun part. I'm going to create a new. So the person will be a new object of model person, and as a parameter I'll specify db1. Then I will load the record number 1 and we'll call print greeting. And it says, hello, my name is John, because in our SQL, the person with ID 1 is called John. I can change that to db2, and if I execute, it says, hello, my name is Sue, because this time the data is being loaded from the static data. Okay, let's improve this greeting. I'll specify the age over here, please. And live in city, street. Okay. So in order to start using age, I'll need to add this new field. But I could execute add field again with the parameter age, like that. And now I have age. Age is 14. The other option over here is that's kind of a new format, defining fields. We can define multiple fields at the same time. So add fields as, and okay, we have John and where he lives. Now, the new feature in version 0.4 is ability to join people. And looking inside here, you see there's address ID, and then the corresponding address ID will have those values. So I can actually join address like that, and then call add fields. Now, this time I'm using a join object, and I'm going to define these fields from a related table. So I need street and city. Street, city. Okay, and if I execute it now, you see that actually fetch street and fetch city. Okay, So the important thing to note here is that this line, load 1, will generate only a single query because it offloads the implementation of the join into the actual SQL. Now, if I change that to DB2, do with DB1, you see that it actually works with arrays as well. So how can it work? I'm going to put this inside a variable. I'm going to do var dump j. So the j, this join, is implemented with a class called join array right now. So when we initialize the model, it detects that the persistence is array, so it uses a join array and implements all the interfaces necessary to do the queries. Let's do this to be clear. Right, so we're using Agile join array over here. The other thing I wanted to show is city. Okay, so the city is of type data field. What about name? Okay, now if I switch from DB1 to from DB2 to DB1, you'll see that it uses join SQL, and instead of just regular field, it uses field SQL. So that's like an extension to the field class, which is a little bit more sophisticated. But the way how I define my class over here, it didn't change. It's the same thing. Let me also show you persistence, right? So persistence SQL. This is actually I can use this parameter and trigger some funky things. For instance, if this persistence okay. And depending on the type of persistence, we will either execute the join, or we'll just say it's the same table. And if with a static data source, we'll actually we'll need to define a street and city over here, right? City column. Hold on, to keep it. Persistence. Okay, so it still works for SQL, but if I switch to DB2, now it doesn't do the join, and instead it fetches the results from one big array, this one over here. So it doesn't look inside this anymore. So I have flexibility of changing the way how data persists in a database. So it's really, really cool. This concludes my first video about Agile data. I'll keep working on adding more features. So for now I just can only load a single record. There's no iteration available. I'll build iteration next and do some other stuff. conditions and other things. So that's all for now. Thank you for watching.